Hey fellow tennis nerds, I hope all is well. This is the second time I'm talking to Coach Evan, a guy who helps me with analysis pieces. He's a very clever coach. He has different ideas on tennis. He thinks outside the box, which I really like, and I think it fits the tennis nerd audience and the brand. And he's ex D1 college player, coached all his life pretty much, and also has kids that play tennis. So he gets it from the parent-coaching relationship to just thinking about coaches and how pro player conduct points, patterns of play, combos, and everything. So we get into the weeds of a lot of different things in this two-part podcast. So this is the first part of it, and I want to thank the sponsor, which is Fuzzy Yellow Balls, for a very related thing that they want to push, which is the singles playbook that I actually bought over a year ago. Helped me a lot to understand patterns of play, combos, how to build points, etc. And this book actually comes with loads of examples where you can, beat different types of players, have different plays that can actually work well against certain styles, approaching versus a counter puncher, for example. And you have videos covering each and every one of these ideas. So it's like 60 pages full of different plays. So I can really recommend this one, and it's quite related to what me and Evan talk about in our conversation. So check this one out. I will put a link in the description, and thanks to Fuzzy Yellow Balls for sponsoring Tennis Nerd and this video. That is about it. I think we should dive deep into it. If you want more Tennis Nerd content, please check out my patreon.com/tennisnerd. And my affiliates, the links are in the description. Let's dive deep into the conversation. Have a nice day, and don't forget to play some tennis.
What I talked about was like strengthening the mind. Like when to beat someone, you never think you're gonna win. I'm always like, I remember back to when I was younger, and I would drive 45 minutes up to the stadium at UMass, and I would run. And just long story short, I was there. I'm like, okay, I'm going up there. I'm gonna go 30 times single step up and down there, up and down. And I get there, and I'm at 8 or 9, and I'm like huffing and puffing. I'm like, I get the 12, and I'm like, what are you doing? And then I'm like, how can I not get the 20? I was here going to go to 30. But long story short, over time, I was able to get up to like 3 sets of 20s. Then I started going a little bit more. Then one day, after about 6 weeks, I just went crazy. I just kept berating myself. I'm like, I get the 30. I'm like, well, you got to get the 40. I'm like, so-and-so got the 40, you got to get the 50. And then I get the 50, I get the 60, get the 70. Next thing you know, I was running an hour and 15 straight for single steps. And I didn't even realize I was just in the zone, just doing it. I was like, there's nobody who's in better shape than me. Like, if a worst case scenario, I'm going to grind out the match. And then what I started realizing when I was younger was I didn't need all the skill set that you needed to win a match, or it wasn't about getting better strokes as much as it was like, to outwork someone mentally and physically.
Yeah, if you're strong both mentally and physically, you win a lot. You need to have, I think, like 2-3 ways of winning a match. You can't just have plan A and then that's it, and then you leave. It's like, if plan A doesn't work, I'm out. It's not the best. But a lot of players have that, especially on the rec level. It's like a lot of plan A only.
Yeah, the hard part. So, for instance, when I go back to like training some of the juniors, or I'm training my daughter, when she's so young. Like, I don't grind her legs. I don't grind her. Like, I don't sit there and feed her tons of like fed ball and go like 30 side to side break, 30 side to side break. What I do is I just I slowly ease it in, but she's always complaining about her knees. So I'm like, I see these parents just like, okay, we don't care. We just want you to be number one. Oh, my knees hurt. Yeah, whatever. But we just want you to be number one. And we're just going to you just got to keep training. You got to get through it. And I think that's where mentally, that's where some of the kids go away. And then the other part is they get the injuries. I mean, the injuries are so, I don't say prevalent, but it's overuse.
I think they're becoming more prevalent. I think that's what you see. I mean, I don't know if it's racket strings overplaying or what, it's just a combination, but it's over. Like, you see kids, pros, amateurs, everyone is struggling with like overuse injuries.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people attribute that to the polys, but the polys, if you get a softer poly, like the links isn't that bad. Like, if I was hitting, like, one of the ones you sent me was Outlast, Solenko Outlast, I think it was called.
Yeah, because of BROOKSBY.
Yeah. So I use it and it hit fine. It's what I call a dead poly. It's like you get the same feel every time you get to play with it. Yeah. Then I played a couple sets with it, and my arm felt dead. I was like, what the heck's going on? I'm like, also like, but yeah, because that's what someone said to me. They're like, oh, I think BROOKSBY uses that. when I did all that stuff on Brooksby, I was watching his combos, look at how he sets up his point. He always goes back to that recycle to the backhand corner. Then he plays JJ Wolf and loses. And I said to a buddy, I said, I wouldn't be surprised if he skips the clay court season. I go, there's something a little bit going on with that guy. And then he doesn't play for a while. Then he shows up, gets crunched by a group, goes to the next tournament. He wins against a qualifier. This guy's like, what, 35, 40 in the world. He wins against a qualifier, and he was screaming like it was like the US Open final. Like, I laughed. I was like, that's why he cracks me up. I watch it, he makes a couple wins, and he leads into the French, and he get smoked yesterday. But I laugh at the American players because we're so bad on the clay. The clay is like tough for us.
I think it's a historic. I mean, Jim Courier was pretty good, but overall, it's not been the best.
Yeah, so I was thinking about it. I'm like, why are we so bad on the clay? Like, why are the Americans so bad? And it's because of the hard courts. But I said when we run on the hard courts, it's like our feet are like touching the ground, right?
Yeah.
When we run on the clay, it's the same thing. But if it's like a bald tire. It's like a bald tire on rain surface. We're running on our toes, just like on a hard court, but on the clay, you want to be like more like flat. You want to put more flat, and we just don't learn that. Players will learn how to slide. I remember back in the day, training at academy, we always work on our sliding, but it's the sliding, it's the forward movement. Like you see, like Djokovic was having trouble. He's getting drop shot a lot, and then the funny thing with the pros is they go match to match. Like I'm noticing like a trend on like, say, I forget which match. I think it was a Rune match. Like Rune was playing somebody in the first round. The tournament that Rune made to the final, I think he won the tournament. First round, he almost got knocked out. And the guy he was playing was coming in and having success on the serve, not the serve volley, but hit and follow into the net. And so he gets by that match. He plays Zverev, and Zverev's like, hits the wall, and he's like, you know what? The other guy yesterday, the guy that had a success coming to net, I think I'll come to the net. And it's like he started coming in on what I call rags. It's like coming in on nothing. And he's getting passed left and right. But the day before, Rune was not making any passing shots. But the point being, I think some of the pros, the coaching makes me laugh. I'm seeing a trend that they'll look at the previous guy's match. I call it lazy man's coaching, but they'll look at the previous match and be like, well, if that worked for that guy, it'll work for you. The other thing I've been noticing with the clay court season, one question I had before it started was, are the points different on the clay court season to the hard court season? But those hard court combos, if you notice, like Djokovic's combos have changed since the clay court season started, or I'm calling it a 4-ball combo. He's mastering his 4-ball combo. Like Brooksby, so I watched a little bit of that match this morning, and I watched a little bit yesterday of like not highlights, but I kind of like cycled through it. And he's playing that hardcore combo, and Cuevas is just like knows it, and he's like teeing up. He's like either hitting a winner on his backhand, he's hitting a forehand from the same backhand location that he's hitting to, or he's dropping it. And I'm like I get it. Like, you're going to go to these tournaments with what got you there, but that's not what's getting you there on the clay court.
No, it's I mean, like, that's the beauty of tennis, is that it's a different sport every time you change surface, right?
Yeah, and then I don't know if you noticed too, the grunting, that's making me laugh.
You mean the guy who played Dominic, or?
No, he was grunting loud too.
Oh, he was bad, huh? Yeah, it was. I didn't see the match. I was watching highlights this morning, and it was hard to watch it. And I was not alone, because there was a lot of comments saying exactly the same thing. Like, I mean, obviously you feel for Dominic, something is up. His confidence on his forehand is gone.
Yeah.
But the grunting thing from Delian was excessive, right? He was like, every time he hit something that seemed to give 5% effort or 10% effort more than usually, he was going screaming. It's like, and long ones. Like it was really a long and quite excessive grunt.
That kind of bugs me. That's why there's some females I just can't watch.
No. Of course. I mean, there is some famous, like Azarenka, I think, pretty loud. Sharapova had a hard time watching for most of her career. I think there are some more extreme ones, but not as good probably as well. And it's not easy. Like it's too much. You would definitely bother the other player, which maybe is a point, but it's not really nice, I think.
No, and then I know, like, it's not just Brooksby, it's a couple other people are doing it too, but they're doing it on big points. They're not doing anything. All of a sudden it's break point, and they're like,
yeah.
It's like, come on. I'm like, like, that's a little bit much, but the funny thing about this day and age is that's where I think I wrote one of the pieces, how that wouldn't have when over well with me. Like in the locker room, I would have probably, I probably would have said something to the guy. I'd been like, hey, listen, you gotta. But I remember Lendo was getting upset with Agassi back in the day. If you want to go back to old school, Lendo used to complain about his grunting.
I think he
But
used to complain in general, but
yeah,
yeah,
complain about whatever he could complain
yeah,
about.
yeah, whatever he could complain about, he would.
And like you said, when I watched your thing yesterday, people were all chasing that perfect technique.
Yeah.
You know, everyone's chasing it. And then, so since I've been doing the this year, I never really went online that much over stuff. I just kind of did my teaching, did my whatever. But then I start going online. Now I'm looking at content and stuff started pop on my YouTube. There's a couple guys I don't mind, and then there's a couple guys I'm just like, but like you said, it's all technical based. But I'm curious. So say I put a website together. Well, I don't want to tell my information, right? So you got to pay for that. But at the same time, it's like, well, what do I got to put out there? I'm gonna put some technical stuff out there. At least I know I can play, you know. And then I've showed the technique, do some quick drills, blah blah blah. But it's a little funny to me how the whatever you want to call it, the game works, you know, with the online stuff, because there's stuff I think about and there's drills. I mean, I have tons of content, and it's now I'm trying to put it on from paper to the computer, which is a pain. But I'm like, there's got to be people thinking the stuff I'm thinking. But then the more I talk to people, the more people reach out to talk to me. They're like, you're just different. You're outside the box. And I'm like, yeah, but these guys got to be thinking about that stuff too. But the way I put together my combos are a little bit different. They're only getting better. Like, meaning I got 2-on-1 drills I'm putting together that are for, like, I'd say 10 and above UTR, but then below I'm really focusing on like the beginning stuff right now more. I'm doing my bigger stuff on the side. So the way I look at coaching these days, it's like these guys who got millions of dollars, like it's like a CEO of a company. Like the CEO isn't the manager. He isn't the product this and the product that. The CEO is just delegating the roles. I mean, do you see it when you go to the tournaments, how big the teams are? The teams don't look that big.
Depends on the like some players. I mean, if you go on anyone lower, they go like alone or with a coach. I mean, we're talking maybe 500 or ish ATP ranked. But then if you go like, you know, I'm probably going to Germany and Spain to watch ATP 250 now next month. And I've been in the player restaurants, in the player locker rooms or gyms.
What's part of that team? Is it a physio, a coach?
Physio, coach, hitting partner, some kind of trainer. But it's an interesting situation. I listened to this podcast today from Simon Sinek, who's a famous mentor in like the business world in general, like about finding your why and being more purposeful in your life. And a reason that a lot of like professional athletes after their career or when they achieve like their goals, which is like winning Grand Slams or being number one or whatever sport you do it, they get depressed. And the reason is that their goals are always completely self-obsessed. Like, so they only have in their whole team, everyone around them is all about them performing, right? And their whole goal with hiring people is for them to get an extra % of some kind in their game. So extra chance of winning. And after you've done that, or after your career, let's say you don't become number one, there's an emptiness because you didn't give anything really back. Like you might have fans, but that's just a byproduct. It's not like that you made the fans. And he had a good point. Like he said something that was pretty funny. He said that they usually, when you ask them, like, so why do you do this? Like, what's your pursuit? Oh, I want to inspire kids. And he's just like, that's just bullshit. Like, that has nothing to do with any inspiration. He just wants to be number one. You know, that's all he thinks about. That's why he hires his team. That's why he goes out to train every day. He has nothing to do about inspiring anyone. It's all very, very egotistical. And that's, I think, when that's done and when you kind of get down on the ground again and become a normal human being, it's a pretty shallow pursuit, right? I mean, it's like that's where you don't find any happiness in just your ego being everything you think about for a whole career. Like if you're Michael Jordan, if you're someone, like it's the whole career is you. It's like your ego winning.
Tom Brady, he retires and he's unretired. He's going to come back. And I'm like, I question some of that. Is it about him or is it about the records? Is it about like that whole like that? At some point you got to walk away. But yeah. Hey, what do I know?
To be a pro athlete, I guess it's very much a pursuit of excellence in your whole team, in your training, in your diet, in your whatever gains you can make. But it can become quite hollow, right, as a thing. So I think that's what you're seeing. And when I was watching Osaka and her team, it feels a bit surreal. Like she didn't seem super happy to be there, to be fair. Her team, you know, they were, I guess, trying, you know, what can they do? If you're coaching someone that doesn't even seem super happy to play tennis, your happiness will also diminish, right? So you won't be very excited to go like, oh, I'm going to work with this player who's you know, millionaire, gazillionaire, and she is not even want it. You know, so it must be a tough thing to go through, I think.
So I got a dog now it's like 2 years ago. I had a dog growing up, but either way, I kind of play with it, but then I'm like, leave me alone type thing. Like, look, go do your own thing, get out of here. But the dog will always come back to me. And my wife, they'll sit there and be like, well, I don't know why that dog likes you so much, because you don't even give it the time of day. And I'm like, well, that's probably why. So coming back to like Osaka, sometimes the cool thing about coaching is like with players, you have to read the player. You have to know what is going on in the background, like with the parents and all that kind of stuff. And what happens with her, I'd almost treat like in that situation that you just gave me, I'd be like, well, you got to do the opposite. You got to kind of turn your back a little bit, make them come. Because even like a few weeks back, my daughter, she was complaining a little bit, and I was like, whatever. I go, like, it was April vacation. She took 2 weeks off after a tournament, and I didn't know if she was ever going to play again. Like, I'm like, whatever. If you're not going to play, you're not going to play. So I didn't really ask her. I'm like, I'll wait till she says, hey, what's going on? And so a few weeks go by, and then she's like, are we playing today? And I'm like, are we playing today? I don't know. Or do you want to play today? She goes, well, I thought we were going to play today. I'm like, all right. And so I waited for the bug to come back to her, and then she picked it back up. But there's the other half of me was like, nope, you know, you got to play. You got it Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, every week. You can't miss a day, because every day you miss, you're losing out, because these kids are training. And you do the whole mantra from when we were kids about like, you know, you're losing sleep and over these people aren't, where they're like, go, go, go. And I laugh. I mean, it's tough because it's a fine line especially with the junior, especially with your own kid. Like, one of the thoughts that popped up, and this could be totally like off the wall crazy, but it is what it is. But I was thinking about like, I'm mowing the lawn. I'm thinking about like, oh, what am I going to talk to Jonas about? Like, I could talk to him about profiling and stuff like that. So like for me, like I'm like what I call like more of a profiler. I love like match play. I love like watching the stuff, and I love like seeing kids say like a couple months later, and I look at them and I'm like, okay, I know what they've been doing for the past 2 months. They've been working on X, Y, and Z. And some of these kids that bonk out at like 9, 10 UTR and can't get over that hump. Like part of me is like, let me talk to their coach they had at 10 years old. Let me talk to their coach they had at 12 years old, at 13, at 14, and just start doing all the dig work and be like, okay, they lost like 6 months here. They lost a year and a half here because that coach was way too technical and added on to them. Like, the bottom line is you get those roadblocks coming, like, I want to say like that 10 to 14 range. But then they still keep training. You just got to get on schedule, got to keep training. And then you get to 18, 19, 20, and you just never progress because of something that happened when you were 12. A lot of time, I think it comes back to the parents. But I mean, I hate to throw it all on the parents, but like, I'm even guilty of some mental blocks in my kids. Obviously, I'm not perfect, but I don't claim to be perfect either.
You see a lot of parents, and I've like hit with juniors that play every day, like they're 15, 16 years old, and you don't see any love for tennis. And then you ask them when their parents not there, you're like, so why do you play tennis? Like, you don't seem to like it at all, you know? Oh, but my parents, you know, blah, blah, blah. I would rather be this or do this. And then that's just, you know, that's never going to be good. Like, that's just quit playing tennis. You know, don't do something you don't want to do. You get so much more reward and enjoyment if you actually like doing it, you know?
Like, I look at coaching or like hitting as like a memory thing too. So say you hit 2 days a week, but what you're doing is you're focusing on combos, say. So you're getting a lot out of that. But if it's new to you, but if you're hitting 4 days a week and all you're doing is coming out cross courts, down the lines, volleys, play a 21, and then go. And because even like that piece I wrote to you on that 21, like sometimes back in the day, I don't like to share too much, but now I'm like being more open about stuff.
Yeah.
But those 21s are killers and I talked to my students about it lately. And I said, we're not doing that anymore, because I said, you can be up on me 11-3. You win 10 points, I win 10 points, but all you did was just ride me out. Or if you're serving 5-5 and where you serve 5, I serve 5, do the same format. It's the same format. I just got to win 3 out of every 5 and I'm going to win. But you're not focused on strategy. Say I'm playing in college and Monday, Tuesday, we had matches. So if I played a couple kind of mediocre matches and I felt a little tight, I'd show up at my coach's door on lunch break. I'd be like, hey, can you feed me some balls for like a half hour today? I'll do whatever after, but just feed me some balls. And like, yeah, no problem. I'll feed you some balls. I get to practice. You're playing a ladder match. I'm like, I just played 2 matches Monday, Tuesday. I'm playing a ladder match now. I'm pissed off. And I got a match on Thursday or Friday. So like, when am I ever going to get to work on my game? So I'd be pissed off. So I would start, I start goofing off. Like, meaning like, I'd be like, you know what? Like, I don't care. He's making me play. I'm not into it. I'm just going to serve wide serves the whole time for the whole set and see if I can win the set by just doing one thing. And all of a sudden I started putting points together. I started being like, so say I serve wide and I'm like, what's the result? The result's going to go to forehand to your backhand to the middle. So all of a sudden, the more slice serves I hit out wide, the more, and I said, you know what, I'm going to do that tomorrow too. He's going to make me play a ladder match tomorrow. He's probably not going to let me hit again. So I'm going to do it again. So all of a sudden I started getting creative and fun and I started doing the same thing. And I started noticing the same result. I'm like, oh my God. So now I started going up to the line and be like, all right, serving out wide, ball's coming to my forehand. I'm taking the forehand up the line. I'm going to follow to the net and see what happens. And all of a sudden you start putting A, B, and C together. But I didn't learn that by my coach. I learned that from being frustrated and kind of pissed off that he wouldn't let me work on my game or get my timing back.
That's a pretty mature way of approaching it, I guess. Like, I mean, generally that's might be an issue also for the pros, like, because tournaments are happening every week and there's travel in between and there's probably some PR or whatever, depending on how good you are. So when do you actually do, like, okay, you always work, but it's like I think it's to do any major changes will you need more time, right?
Yeah, that's where I think that's that lag on the juniors when they get to like that 10, 11 UTR level, or at least the boys, and they can't get to 12 is because of that process that just keeps going. It's the same process. They're playing sets and they're playing 21s. They're playing more sets or playing more 21s, and their game plans are getting so conservative that they're not adding anything to their game. With the French, I'll tell them that they should be looking for grip change combos. Tight and then spread, tight and then spread. You can do that on a hard court too, but I find that on clay, the more you set the ball in one spot, the more they're going to get crushed. But you can get away with it on a hard court. Like, look at BROOKSBY just chasing stuff down on the hard court, but he looks like a fish out of water on the clay.
You have more time on clay, but it's also a game where you can't just use your opponent's pace. You need to generate pace, and that some players thrive on that, but you need to play a lot on clay. Like, you need to be able to generate action on the ball, so you need to always generate.
With the tennis channel and all that stuff, the thing that cracks me about them compared to the golf, when you watch golf, the Nick Faldo and all those guys are at the tournament. They're watching the practice green. They're watching what Tiger's doing. They're watching what Justin Thomas is doing, and they're commenting on it. When you get the tennis channel people, they're in New York. The tournament's in Paris, but they're in New York, commenting from New York, and it's like, it would be nice if they were out at the practice courts, viewing the practice courts and letting people know, oh, we saw Medvedev practice. He's really working a lot on his volleys. We've been noticing that for the past 6 months. He's been really spending a lot of time, but doesn't show on the matches. But he's really, every time we see him out there on the practice courts, they're doing some kind of volley work. I think the fans would want to hear more about that. Or grip change combos where you got to tap the center. Like, I never realized how important the center of the court was. As a kid, you're always like open court, open court, open court. And like, even when I play the juniors, anyone under like a 10 UTR, they always love the open court, easy to read. So I'm 47. I said my little one's 7 years old. By the time she's 17, I go, I'm at 57. I go, I have no interest hitting with like anybody above a 10 UTR. Like, I'm already like setting my stage for the 9 to 15-year-olds, and then having the couple younger pros in the area work with the older players, and then make a system. Because what I find around here is I hate to throw people under the bus, but a lot of people will hold on to players too long. And I don't, like you said about ego earlier, it's like, it's a little egotistical, but they'll say, well, I'm egotistical. And I'm like, well, like, I don't try to coach 5 to 10-year-olds right now, because it's kind of like coming back to fun. It's fun or it's not fun. Meaning, like, when I coach them, I'm a totally different person. I'm just there to goof off and let them have fun and enjoy their time. But the problem with that is the kids will go away and think you're just Mr. Goofball. And then, then when you go hang out with the older kids and you're being serious, it's like, well, I remember it used to be fun, but now you're getting too serious. And it's like, well, what do you want? Do you want fun all the time? But the point being is, like, under the good systems, like if you're in the Boston area, there's a lot of good pros that will be good for the 5 to 10 year olds, and then they'll move up to the 10 to 15 pro, and then when they're 15 to 18, they'll move up to the higher level X players and whatnot. Teach more. I like to say strategy, but like if you don't go to tournaments, if you don't watch the kids play, if you don't watch the college players play, you lose touch with, say, today. I just stopped going to matches, stopped playing matches. 10 years later, I'm still teaching today. You know what I mean? Like I like once you stop going to matches, you have to keep up with the times. Like if you don't, like there's people who still teach old school tennis, and I'm like, have you seen like the 8-year-olds play? Have you seen the 10-year-olds play? They're hitting mega tops. And like my 11-year-old, she doesn't play too much. She's not super serious about tennis, but she's got a Western grip. I never taught her that. I just taught her spin. You know, when I fed her balls, I just said spin, spin, spin. She never asked me how, and none of my kids ever ask how, and I never tell them. I'm like, figure it out. Like, because I don't know if I talked to you about it in the other podcast. I'm not sure I did, but I call it molding. I said, what it is like coming back to what you said about passion and all that stuff. It's like, you can't tell kids what grip to use and what thing to use. You got to let them figure their grip out, and it's got to be part of them. Because so like, for instance, my daughter, my older one, when she takes 2 weeks off, she comes back. You would never know she's had 2 weeks off. You'd think she was still playing the whole time. Like physically, yeah, she might be a little more tired, a little quicker, but other than the physical side, I was always like, I was the opposite. Like when I was a kid playing, I needed to play 7 days a week. I'd play 4 hours a day. I'd train. I'd take one day off. I felt like I didn't play for a month. And I never wanted my kids to be like that, or the kids I work with. And I wanted them to understand the stroke enough. So that's why I preach like contact point and spin and whatnot. But it was just funny that my daughter grabbed a Western grip, and I'm like, what the heck is that? And I'm like, hey, you know, Fognini's got a Western grip. A lot of guys have Western grips.
Now they make also the grips of the rackets. Like obviously Wilson has changed the grips of the rackets. So now when you get a new racket, let's say you get a Clash or something modern, head boom, the grip is made for you to hold the racket in the way where you either go semi or Western. I feel like that it actually feels natural. Like I grew up Eastern. So for me, it's been like, it's tough to change. My hand always wants to go back. Like it always wants to go back, but I'm trying to change, but it's tough, you know, but for them, it's like, okay, you know, this is how the racket handle looks. So obviously I pick it up like this, and they just hold it naturally. And I think that's good. Like that's one way it's been helpful to actually redesign the pallets of the rackets a bit, because they now are more natural for a Western grip or, you know, semi-Western grip. So that's, I mean, I don't see any kids has Eastern grip, right? I don't see that at all.
The only one I'm curious on tour is Rublev. I wonder what he seems a little bit Eastern, maybe, but I could be wrong. I have to look at him up close.
Yeah, he looks a bit like, because he's also very his take back looks a bit more like that.
Yeah, boxy on that. Yeah, like even yesterday when you were talking about like people saying how you have a big backswing or this or that.
Yeah.
I laughed because even my daughter, they said the same thing. And I just let her do her thing. She'll figure it out in the long run. So what I've been doing lately for warm up. So you know how you come out warm up, do your regular 5-10 minute warm up. I think I wrote it in one of the warm up pieces that I wrote for you. Blue, that's brown and red. So I'll have my daughter, like today I'll have her warm up, and after she warms up for just normal warm up, and then we'll maybe spend a few extra minutes on volleys. I go right into where she has to hit to my blue spot. I can go anywhere, you know, in relation to like not hitting winners, but hitting solid enough where she's got to start reading where I'm going, get a feel for what's happening. I'll do that for about 5 or 10 minutes. She'll get a drink. I'll go to the middle, and then I'll do that. I'll hit anywhere I want. And then I'll go to the red and go to the backhand corner. And what happens is, like I said, she has to pick up on my patterns, and she has to focus on an area. But rather than come out and do cross courts and down lines, those kids get grip change all the time. I see those kids at tournaments. I'm like, I just wish my daughter was more experienced enough to like realize that she could tap the center on some of these on some of the people. That's just a simple combo I was talking about. You can change these anywhere you want. You can put them here and here. You can micro move it if you wanted to. You can put a shorter spot here and a deeper spot here. Anything where you can move the ball flight is way more important than like consistency. That's where one of the trollers said like, well, you got to be consistent too. There's something to be said about consistency. And like, I think people think I'm bashing consistency. I'm like, no, if you're from your beginning days to about 6 UTR, it's important. But after 6 UTR, you need strategy, you need weapons, you need whatever. But I'll show you a funny one I just started doing. But this is where some of my combos get kind of kooky, and like people be like, "This guy's nuts," and like, and that's where like some of the trollers, I'm like, "Yeah, I go, I'm a little bit nuts." But so this is another. It's a warm up drill, but it's a little bit different. And what I do is you go 1 and 2 here, 1 and 2, 3, 4, 5. I call it like a walk the dog drill, like a yo-yo. Like you go 1, 2 back and forth here. The next shot goes here, and then the next 2 go here, and then you walk it back. So you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you just keep like moving. It's like an early combo training. It's something just to move your feet a little bit. So you know how we talked about that drill, and I kind of teased you for that cross court down line drill.
The butterfly, yeah.
Yeah. And so this is similar to that, but what this does, it helps movement a little bit.
Yeah, I think the middle one is it's not maybe as drastic as the butterfly, because that can be quite difficult. I mean, I've seen a lot of club players try it, and it becomes kind of like difficult, you know. This one, you have the down the line one, probably gives you a little bit of a stop, which is, and you still have to move over and keep. I think it makes more sense in that sense, you know, because the butterfly can be quite difficult for some players to hit and to complete.
Yeah, and I was thinking about that too. Like even if you do the butterfly one, if you tightened it up and made it like a hit here and a hit here, because even if you went just on half a court, if you just went inside like that, it's so much easier because you're just moving a little bit and you're not getting stuck on the cross court forehand or the cross court backhand.
Yeah, I think it's sometimes like you have to run. Like the opponent hits like maybe a too deep ball or a slightly out ball, and then the other player has to run, and then you start losing momentum because one guy is pushed and too far. When you're closing in the court like that, it's easier to do it, but it still requires quite a lot of footwork thinking, you know.
Yeah, and so the other one I did. So I have this older guy he hits with me, and then he uses the information to hit with some of the locals that he hits with. So what we do when you're in relation to what you're saying about that, when you're doing that drill where it's hard, someone gets pushed off the court, then it gets a little sloppy. I mean, it happens to all of us. So what I do is I tap the center. So if we have an open hit, like say we have an open hit, we're just moving each other around. It's not 100%, but it's not 50%. But what happens is once I put them off here, the roll is you have to hit the center. Yep. And then it gives them time to get back. I mean, I don't know. I never thought about it that much back in the day, but now like for him, we did that yesterday. It was fun. It was fun because the rally kept going. This drill where I do this with my daughter, the other thing I forgot about was what that teaches her is when she hits here, she should notice she's not running as much. And all of a sudden she's like, well, if that worked in practice like that, well, in the match, if I hit the center, I'm probably not going to be running that much. Now, the only difference is you get a kid with a forehand who's going to shift out and just start smoking inside out forehands, and you're just pushing balls to the center. That's where like someone who comments will be like, well, what happens if this? It's like, yeah, like that's obvious it's going to happen. Like if you're playing a big hitter, you know, that combination is not going to work as well to a certain degree. It does work though.